A miracle at LaGuardia as a flight attendant is thrown from a severed cockpit and survives. Plus, Operation Epic Fury enters its fourth week as the U.S. and Iran trade massive energy strikes. And we head to Chicago, where a Loyola student's death has exposed the lethal gaps in our sanctuary policies. And finally, the Champagne Socialist. Why far-left influencers are lounging in five-star Cuban luxury while the rest of the island sits in total darkness. All that and more right now. Welcome back to the Republic Brothers podcast. He's Matt, I'm Mike. Today is March 25th, 2026, and this is episode 45. Before we get into the show, please hit the subscribe button and like the episode so you don't miss our next episode on Monday. Now, this is never how we like to start the show, but unfortunately, this is the biggest story since our last episode. On the night of Sunday, March 22nd, 2026, an Air Canada Express flight from Montreal was landing at LaGuardia when it collided with a Port Authority fire truck on the runway. Just before midnight, the regional jet was touching down on runway 4. At the same time, a fire truck was crossing the runway to respond to a separate minor emergency involving an odor on another aircraft. The collision was severe enough to sever the cockpit area of the jet. A flight attendant was actually ejected from the aircraft while still strapped into her seat. Miraculously, she survived. But tragically, both the pilot and co-pilot of the Air Canada flight were killed. 2 people on the fire truck and dozens of passengers were injured, with 9 people remaining in serious condition as of today. Initial reports and air traffic control recordings suggest a breakdown in communication. The NTSB reports the runway warning system failed to sound because the fire truck lacked a transponder. A controller was heard frantically telling the truck to stop just before the impact, later stating, "I messed up."
Company, cross 4 Delta.
Truck 1 and company crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000. Jet 646. Jet 646, I see you collide with a vehicle here, just hold position, I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
Is the runway closed?
Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000.
Heading 2000, go around, 2603.
Your tower.
Truck 32, runway 4 is closed, correct?
Yep, go on to runway 4 now. Proceed on runway 4, you have access. Frontier 4195, I got the word that we're going to be closed for a little while. If you want to prepare to return to the ramp, let me know.
Yeah, we got stuff in progress for that, man. That wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know I was here. I tried to reach out to my stuff, and we were dealing with an emergency earlier, and I messed up.
No, man, you did the best you could.
This clip not in real time, though. It has been edited for clarity. Those are some of the key details investigators will look at. The controller saying, "I messed up," acknowledging they were in the midst of a stressful emergency, a different event, when he approved and then rescinded the allowance of the fire truck to cross the runway that the Air Canada jet was then landing on.
I cannot imagine how that air traffic controller is feeling right now. I know we don't have all the information here yet, Matt, but what happened?
It's always tough to talk about stories like this. You feel terrible for the families of the pilots, the flight attendants, and the passengers. Our thoughts and prayers are with all the families impacted by this tragic event. Some errors were made along the way. Communication clearly broke down, and it sounds like the controller forgot he had cleared a plane to land on that runway.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like to me as well. Do you think he's the only one to blame here? Is there one person to blame? Was this a freak accident? Were there multiple things that happened that caused this? What exactly happened?
There's never just one person to blame in an aviation incident. The investigation will look into everything. The big error everyone sees and heard is what happened on the radio. You never know until the full investigation is complete. The controller may have been overworked or fatigued. There could be things that explain why mistakes were made. I would highly recommend people check out the YouTube channel called Mentor Pilot. They give great breakdowns from a pilot's perspective of what all went wrong in crashes. and they regularly talk about the Swiss cheese model. That would be layers of cheese that have holes in it, and as long as one layer catches the air, you won't have a fatal accident. Multiple failures have to happen for a crash to be the end result. You know the controller feels terrible. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet, though. And as a reminder, airplanes are still far and away the safest method of transportation. Driving your car is around 100 times more dangerous than flying, but it's more familiar to you, so it feels safer.
Given the potential ATC communication mess that could have caused the LaGuardia crash and TSA going haywire during this government shutdown, wouldn't it be better to privatize critical airport safety and security stuff like TSA and ATC? That way they'd be out of the government's drama and political standoffs. Do you think that that would actually boost safety and make people face the music when they mess up? If, for example, it was the airlines or someone else responsible for these operations instead of the government?
In a way, yes. When tested, TSA misses up to 80% of weapons smuggled through airport security. Airports probably should be private, similar to how they are in Europe. Most of the large airports like Heathrow and Gatwick in the UK, as well as Charles de Gaulle Airport in France, are privately owned. Vienna International Airport is a publicly traded company. These airports are run like businesses where they try to make the passenger experience better. Not all airports are privately owned, as smaller ones tend to generate less revenue, therefore they're owned by local governments. But 75% of passengers travel through private airports in Europe.
Wow, 80%? That seems like a lot, right? I would think that running things like a business would make it more efficient. Airports are already stressful as it is.
Yes, traveling through an airport in the U.S. is not a fun experience, even when the government is fully funded. TSA was brought in after 9/11 to prevent terror attacks, but it has never actually prevented a terror attack.
You said the large airports in the UK are privately owned, and Vienna is publicly traded. So how do they go about operating security and ATC? I assume they're not government employees at that point, right? Like they work for the airport or a private company?
There's two separate sides to it. There's air traffic control and there's security. Most of the security is private security companies that are contracted and hired by the airport, but they follow the laws and regulations set by the government. Air traffic control is a little more complicated. Most are owned by the government or a partnership where the government has some ownership. The government also sets the rules for controllers. Air traffic control gets a cut anytime a plane lands at a privately owned airport, and that's how they're able to fund it. So while most of the employees at the airport don't directly work for the government, they're all responsible to follow government laws. That would be the best way to do it. Have the government set the law and then have private companies that follow it so that when a government shutdown happens, workers aren't impacted.
So how do you think the U.S. compares to places like those that operate that way instead of the way we do? Like, is there a noticeable difference?
There is a very noticeable difference, but they are very similar in terms of safety. In every case, the governments set the standards for safety and security. Efficiency is really where the private airports have the advantage. They can invest without politics getting in the way as often. They're able to raise capital when they need to. You typically get upgrades to the airports more often, and that leads to better layouts to move passengers quicker. Because it is private, the airport is incentivized to have shorter wait times and more services available to make your time there more enjoyable. You do that so people don't fly into other airports in the area. London, for example, has 5 airports. There are options as to where you fly. Private airports often do have higher revenues per passenger, And a decent amount of that comes from the retail stores and services in the airport. It's not just the prices people pay for tickets on the flight. Most people get to the airport early, and if they can move through the airport quicker, they have more time to visit shops, and that's how they make their money.
Yeah, I don't visit the airport very often, but when I do, I'm one of those people that likes to get there super early so that I don't have to stress about getting through TSA and getting to my gate. I like to be there super early, get my laptop or my iPad out, and just hang out and wait. And getting into the airport and parking and all that is just, it's a super stressful time for everyone.
It is, and it really does feel like a chore in the U.S. It's a better experience in Europe. London Heathrow's kind of the gold standard. There are airports in the U.S. that have more than enough traffic to do something similar, but with governments being in control, that's just not going to happen.
All right, well, speaking of governments being in control, let's dive into Iran and Operation Epic Fury. On Monday, March 23rd, Trump said that he'd hold off on hitting Iran's power and energy grid for 5 days. This comes after a 48-hour ultimatum he gave them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says that his team has had some productive talks with Iranian leaders and claims they've agreed to stop enriching uranium and keep things quiet on the missile front. Of course, Iran's foreign ministry is calling fake news, saying that he's just trying to mess with oil prices and that they aren't talking to Washington at all. Even though the big energy strike is on ice for a minute, the fighting has not stopped. The IDF says they've taken out about 330 of Iran's 470 missile launchers, but Iran is still firing back. A couple of missiles hit southern Israel over the weekend, injuring nearly 100 people. There are also reports of Iran dropping mines in the Strait of Hormuz. They're saying the strait is open to non-enemy ships, but word is some companies are paying Tehran fees just to get through. Once news broke about the 5-day delay, oil prices dipped below $100 a barrel, which is a nice break from the crazy highs we saw last week. We'll see what happens by the Friday, March 27th deadline. Trump says there are negotiations, but Iran says that we're not, and then fires a bunch of missiles. So who's lying here? We say all the time that we don't really trust the government, but which government do you trust more? Iran or America?
Well, they are talking, but Iran is saying they aren't for political reasons. Some of that is internal, but they also know people like John Brennan hate Trump so much that they will believe Iran over Trump. We have seen many times the left-leaning media take the word of terrorists and run with it without even fact-checking it. Iran knows they can use that to their advantage on messaging. They know higher oil prices are bad for Trump, as an example, so they'll try to cause uncertainty to hurt Trump. They are talking because they know we or the Israelis will shoot at the leader until the next leader talks.
I think a big talking point here to bring up is Trump initiated this conflict with Iran during midterm season. He knew that this would make it harder for Republicans to win in the midterms, and he did it anyway. Doesn't that tell you how serious this really is?
It tells you it was very serious, and now was the time. We have said many times Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, and then imagine all the terror they could actually cause. They know fear of nuclear weapons is a real thing, as we saw with Europe and the U.S. under Joe Biden. All we could do was sit there and ask Putin to stop because he said he would use nukes if we got involved. He scared most countries enough that they did nothing when he invaded Ukraine. Iran wanted that same leverage.
There's a lot of split among conservatives on this war in Iran. What's almost mind-blowing, though, is hearing Bill Maher say that he sides with Trump on this one.
You have now this guy, Joe Kent. He quit this week. It was a big story. I think he was the counterintelligence guy. And he said, I can't go along with this because, you know what, he's been listening to too much Tucker Carlson. It's, you know, the Jews made us do it. It's just another version of anti-Semitism that comes out. First it was BDS, then it was their colonizers and genocide, which it wasn't, and all these other reasons, like you can't have a state in the world that's based on religion, even though there's like 46 Muslim countries that are based on religion. Some have the name right in the title of the country. But whatever it is, you have all these. And now the big answer is, no, Israel made us do it. We're Israel's bitch. I don't think we're Israel's bitch. I think we're Israel's ally. But, you know, if I have to be on one side of this MAGA thing, either Trump or Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes, I'll be with Trump on this one. Because that's the other side of MAGA.
Well, Bill Maher is right there. Israel is the best ally we have in the region. Just look at how many other allies actually helped us. When this started, most of them came out immediately and just said they had nothing to do with it.
What's funny about that clip, too, with Bill Maher is saying that if he has to choose between being on Trump's side or being on the side of Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and Tucker Carlson, that he would rather be on Trump's side. Now, is it plausible to think that President Trump knew we might attack Iran and it would have impacts on oil? So we decided to go ahead and get Maduro, and then that way we could take over Venezuela's oil. Is President Trump thinking 5 steps ahead, or do you think the two are completely unrelated?
I think much of it is to do with China. I don't think it was as much to do with oil. Venezuela is closer to the U.S., so we started there to eliminate the threats in an order that wouldn't get a reaction. China is all about themselves, and we are seeing that now. If a conflict were to break out in the Pacific between the U.S. and China, do you think Iran would have stepped in by attacking Israel in the Middle East? Would they have tried to make us fight on multiple fronts and come in and defend Israel as well, while fighting China? I believe they would have. They would have also blocked the flow of oil to hurt the U.S. and Europe. President Trump went about it in an order that would do the least amount of damage to us and our allies. China is all about themselves, and they had some strong words of condemnation for us, but they did not get involved. Countries like Venezuela or Iran, who are reliant on China, may have done different math and decided it was worth getting involved. President Trump, to his credit, has gone one by one and eliminated threats without getting others involved.
I'm sure there's people out there that are going to criticize Trump no matter what he does, as we've said multiple times before. But I think that the planning and the strategy on this has been well thought out. Shifting gears here a little bit, let's shift over to government shutdown. ICE is officially inside of our airports. As of Monday, we know ICE is in at least 14 major airports around the country, including JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, Atlanta, Houston, New Orleans, George Bush Intercontinental, Southwest Florida, O'Hare, Cleveland, Philly, Pittsburgh, Phoenix, and Puerto Rico. This coming, in my opinion, as a tactic to push things along in the government shutdown. However, something else happened that I'm not quite sure how to feel about. Senate Republicans had a deal worked out to fund everything except ICE. And then they would use a reconciliation bill that would not need the support of the Democrats in order to pass. They could use that bill to then fund ICE. President Trump shot that down. He said no negotiating with Democrats until they agreed to the SAVE Act.
Punchbowl News has new reporting this morning on talks between Senate Majority Leader John Thune and President Trump to end the partial government shutdown. Leader Thune told the president that Senate Republicans would support funding all of DHS except ICE, and that funding for the agency could be handled later in a party-line reconciliation bill. But Trump said no, according to multiple sources.
You know what he said? He then said, instead of saying, that's very promising. And by the way, Mika, this shows the Republican senators what heat they're under because of the TSA agents, because of the
they want the TSA agents paid.
Exactly. And it shows heat, and he goes a little late in my judgment, but he goes to Trump and proposes it. And you know what Trump says? We're not doing anything until we pass the SAVE Act.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Mr. Donald Trump, it ain't passing.
Okay.
It will destroy our democracy.
Now, I know I mentioned before that I did not think that it was a good idea for us to separate ICE in this bill. So I'm just not sure if there's a certain legal thing or whatever that they don't want to have to end up fighting later, but this seemed like a resolution. It seemed like we could get away with this without there being too much damage, I guess you could say. Now, I think Chuck Schumer is a snake, and I think he's using this to his advantage, obviously. He's sitting up here saying, we had a deal, this could have worked, and Donald Trump said no. And he's not wrong. But I also don't understand why Trump would shut it down. It's a win-win. We let Democrats think that they got to win because they didn't have to vote to fund ICE, and then Republicans fund ICE without their help anyway. Government shutdown over, thanks for coming. Why wouldn't we do that?
Best guess at this point is it's about leverage still. You can really only pass one reconciliation bill a year. So the more you need to negotiate on, the harder it is. These reconciliation bills are usually voted on along party lines, meaning the real fight would be internal for Republicans, and then it would be their fault. Given how narrow the margins are for the Republicans in both chambers of Congress, it is another fight you would have to solve. Most of the stuff in every bill is thrown in to get one or two congressmen or women to agree to vote for it. That's why these bills are so large, because you have to have a bunch of stuff in it that everyone feels is their cause. The left does it and the right does it. It's not unique to one party. I understand why Trump would want to save it, but at some point he would be wise to use it if the Democrats don't move on ICE. I truly believe the left will never vote for the SAVE Act because it makes stealing an election harder. It's tougher to get the illegals to vote if they need a photo ID.
It's funny you bring the SAVE Act up, too, like that. Have you ever noticed that you don't hear anything about IDs for anything except for this? This is the only thing. Otherwise, if they really cared about it, they would be arguing about having an ID for everything else you do in life. It's just this one thing.
Well, for politicians, this is the most important thing. It's the hardest one to argue as well. There's not many people that are going to complain that you need an ID to buy alcohol when alcohol affects your brain and young people's brains are still developing. That's a tough argument to make. The truth is, they know anyone can get alcohol or cigarettes. I went to the store the other day and watched a guy in his 30s buy alcohol, and when I left the store, I saw him handing it to a kid that looked like he was 17 or 18 years old. Voting is a different beast because that decides who picks which laws matter. We've said with George Soros, for example, what the law says doesn't matter if you simply don't enforce it. That's what this is about. They want no voter ID so that it's easier to rig elections.
Going back to what you said about every bill, there's like one or two congressmen, they have to throw something in there just to get them to agree to it. For anyone who hasn't seen the show House of Cards on Netflix, they depict that in the show very well. There's lots of backroom meetings where someone comes up to someone and says, hey, I need you to get on board with this. And the person says, if you throw this into the bill, I'll vote for it.
I haven't seen the show, but that's about exactly how it usually goes. Both sides do it. Everyone has a cause. And if they can get an amendment thrown into some bill somewhere, they can run on it again. They all do it.
Yeah, and that's how we have a bill that's supposed to be about voting end up with something in there about funding transgender education in Uganda. All right, let's move off DHS government shutdown and into another tough story to talk about, and yet again a reminder of how Democrats are protecting criminals instead of United States citizens. On Thursday, March 19th, 2026, Sheridan Gorman, a freshman business student at Loyola University, Chicago, was walking with a group of friends near the pier at Toby Prince Beach. The group had gone out around 1 a.m. in hopes of seeing the northern lights. According to police and witness reports, Gorman and her friends noticed a man hiding behind a lighthouse at the end of the pier. As the group tried to run away, a masked gunman opened fire. Gorman was struck in the back and pronounced dead at the scene. On March 20th, the next day, Chicago police arrested Jose Medina, a 25-year-old Venezuelan national. He has been charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and various weapons charges. Police used facial recognition software and surveillance footage, which captured a suspect with a distinct limp entering a nearby apartment building and then removing his mask. Medina entered the U.S. in May of 2023. He was arrested for shoplifting in Chicago in June of 2023, but was released after failing to appear in court, leading to an active warrant at the time of the murder. His initial court hearing on March 23rd was delayed because he is currently hospitalized with tuberculosis. This is an illegal immigrant who came into our country, broke the law for a second time a month later, and now is probably being treated for tuberculosis on the dime of the American taxpayer. The case has become a focal point for criticism of sanctuary city policies and border enforcement. Gorman's family released a statement expressing they are gravely disappointed by the policies and failures that allowed the suspect to remain in the country and on the streets. They explicitly rejected the idea that Sheridan was in the wrong place at the wrong time, calling the murder a preventable consequence of system failures. President Trump cited the case on March 23rd as evidence for the need for mass deportations. Meanwhile, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Alderwoman Maria Hadden have faced intense public backlash for their comments. Here was Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker speaking on the issue.
The parents of Sheridan Gorman, she's the Loyola University student, was murdered. What do you say to Sheridan's parents, Tom and Jessica Gorman, when they blame policies, including those in Illinois, for their daughter's murder?
Well, this has been a terrible tragedy, and I know that the Gorman family has suffered mightily. I agree, there have been real failures. Those failures, of course, extend beyond the borders of Illinois. That's their national failures, a failure to have comprehensive immigration reform, a failure of the president to follow his own edict to go after the worst of the worst. And in my view, we have a lot of work that we need to continue to do, but it is the job of the federal government to go after immigration enforcement, and it is the job of our local and state law enforcement to prosecute or to catch violent criminals and prosecute them. And we should continue to do that both on the state level and the national level.
The nerve of this guy to blame Trump for this is completely wild. Chicago won't hold people for ICE to get them out of here. They just send them back out onto the streets, and then you want to blame the federal government? Wow.
This is not a national issue. It's a blue state issue. Trump wanted to get rid of the worst first, but these blue states got in the way to protect a criminal. A young woman was just taken from her family, and he blamed Trump. This was a preventable tragedy that blue states could avoid if they let ICE remove the criminals. This was not wrong place, wrong time. That's what a car accident is, not someone who intentionally shot someone in the back. That is not an accident. It was intentional, and it was avoidable. If he wasn't in the country, this wouldn't have happened.
Even more shocking and crazy was in an interview with Fox 32 Chicago, Maria Hadden described the murder of Sheridan Gorman as, quote, wrong place, wrong time. She stated that the students were doing normal things people do in the neighborhood, but that they may have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, running into a person who had a gun. She further suggested that the group might have unintentionally startled this person at the end of the pier. If that doesn't sound like victim blaming, I don't know what is.
That is victim blaming, and it's also protecting criminals. There are 450 million guns in the U.S. It is not a gun issue. How does someone running away from you justify shooting them in the back? I know for you, Mike, if you look and see someone running away from you, you're going to think that either you're the threat or the threat is behind you and you should start running too.
Exactly. You know what's also messed up about this? I just saw earlier today. The school newspaper put out a formal apology that they called this guy an illegal immigrant. Are you kidding me?
Because they correctly labeled him an illegal immigrant. They had to issue an apology. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And what's even funnier is that you don't hear any conservatives blaming guns for this issue. You don't even hear Democrats blaming guns on this one. We're blaming illegal immigrants. The same people that we keep saying we want gone. He shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Spot on. If he's not here, this doesn't happen.
Now, let's stick with the illegal immigrant theme here and talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man that leftists think is just some regular guy from Maryland. A federal judge has issued a temporary order blocking the Trump administration's attempt to deport the Salvadoran migrant to Liberia. This ruling extends a long-standing legal battle over his status and destination of removal. U.S. District Judge Paula Zenas maintained an injunction against the government's plan to swiftly remove Abrego Garcia to the West African nation. The judge previously required the administration to provide good reason for removal to a third country, including assurances that the receiving nation would not return him to El Salvador, where he faces threats of gang persecution. But wait, Matt. I thought he was a good guy. Why would a gang want to hurt him?
The judge doesn't want him to go to a country that could potentially deport him. But what if he goes to the next country and also commits crimes? Then do they have a right to deport him? I would hope so.
Sounds like a good question, but I think you know the answer. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security argued that Abrego Garcia should be sent to Liberia, citing ongoing diplomatic negotiations. They rejected his request to be sent to Costa Rica, stating he missed his window to designate a preferred country during his original 2019 immigration hearing. Abrego Garcia's attorneys characterized the government's position as hypocritical, noting that the administration is attempting to designate a new country years later while denying their client the right to do the same for Costa Rica. Abrego Garcia was accidentally deported to El Salvador in March 2025 due to an administrative error that violated a court order. He was subsequently returned to the U.S. by court order, leading to the current year-long legal standoff. The administration has been critical of Judge Zenas, labeling such rulings as activist interference. DHS continues to maintain that Abrego Garcia was in the U.S. illegally and has ties to MS-13. The argument that we can't send him to Liberia because they might send him back to El Salvador? Who cares? It's not our problem. I don't care where you go. You just got to go. Why do they not want to let him go to Costa Rica, though?
I would say send him to Costa Rica. Just get him out of the country. El Salvador knew he had ties to gangs, so they wanted him in jail. I understand you don't want to deport him to a place where he could face retaliation for his past, but those were his choices. I say get him out of here and let him deal with it on his own. We are wasting taxpayer money on someone who has had a deportation order for a while. He is not a good American man from Maryland with a family that the left will tell you he is. Gang members who are here illegally should be deported. I don't care where you send him, just don't let him come back after you kick him out.
Yeah, I wouldn't even care if they took him to the other side of the fence in Mexico and said, all right, buddy, see ya. Don't turn around and come this way again.
You know, here is a great opportunity for our great friend Keir Starmer to step up and offer political asylum to someone we don't want. He would be an upstanding citizen in the UK. They would love him. Not the actual British people, but the government would love him because he'd be great for top-line revenue.
Yep, exactly. Earlier this month, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked to leave the Croissanterie, a bakery and cafe in Little Rock, Arkansas. Sanders stated that she was having lunch with two other mothers when the owner approached her security detail and asked the group to leave.
Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders has once again been targeted for being conservative while out in public. This time, Sanders was visiting a cafe with other moms near her children's school when she was asked to leave by staff. Is this ringing bells to you? Happened to her once before. Her team says a man yelled, "It's time to go," and made an inappropriate gesture towards her. One employee even took to social media after the incident, writing, quote, "Sarah Huckabee Sanders, no amount of evil you send our way can ever take our smiles away. I'm proud AF to work here. I'm proud to be gay, and I'm proud to be an Arkansan. My voice matters. Try again," the restaurant saying in a statement to a local CBS affiliate. "Ultimately, we made the decision to support our employees and guests who expressed they were uncomfortable. To clarify, we do not recall any statements indicating that anyone felt threatened. Additionally, the individual who made an inappropriate hand gesture was a customer, not an employee, and the matter has been addressed. We regret being placed in this position and having to make a difficult decision. However, we stand by our choice to support our employees and guests." Now, Sanders, of course, addressed the situation, saying in part, "Arkansans are known for their warm hospitality, and while that restaurant didn't meet that standard, my administration will continue to focus on lifting Arkansans up, not tearing others down," which is a great way of addressing this.
According to Sanders, the owner claimed her presence made the employees feel threatened due to her political views. They noted that the request to leave happened as the group was nearing the restaurant's standard 90-minute table limit. Reports say that she was already done eating and had already paid them. This is the second time that this has happened to Sanders. The last time was in 2018 when she was the White House press secretary. Now, to the employee who said that they were proud to work there and proud to be gay, no one cares. Sarah was not sitting there eating, hoping that none of the employees are gay. Way too many people think that they're the main character. Literally no one in that restaurant cared that you're gay.
Not one person. I find it quite funny because a lot of people go somewhere and they sit there and they think, "I wonder what other people are thinking about me right now. That person just glanced at me. How are they feeling about me?" Reality is, in their head, they're saying the same thing. They're worried about what you think about them. Focus on yourself and make yourself better. You don't need to worry yourself about what others feel. I'll just say, though, you are quite fragile if someone who isn't even talking to you can offend you and make you feel endangered. You might feel that way, but your feelings are not justified. They were no threat to you. They were minding their own business, as you should be doing too.
Yeah, of course they wait until after she pays, though, and it's almost time for her to leave. But let's play a game, Matt. This game is called The Shoe is on the Other Foot. Let's pretend that you and I go out for some food, and in the corner, sitting with his husband, is Don Lemon. Now, we start making quiet comments to the other people sitting around us that we feel uncomfortable and threatened by his politics and his presence in the same building as us. Then we all start telling the employees that we want them removed. Could you imagine the lawsuit that Don Lemon would file against the restaurant? He would sue the hell out of them for discrimination and say that he was kicked out because he's black and gay. It's a private business. I get it. They can do whatever they want. But if you are such a little wussy that you can't sit in the same room as someone who doesn't share your exact views, you're a terrible person. And if this was the other way around, the left would never stop talking about it.
He would definitely sue the restaurant, and he would definitely sue you as well. If I were the business owner, I personally would not kick anyone out of my restaurant for political reasons. As Michael Jordan once said, Republicans buy shoes too. Why alienate part of your potential customer base? That's just bad business.
Yeah, if you're going to alienate part of your business based on politics, you're basically cutting 50% of your potential revenue.
Yeah, go ask Bud Light how that went.
Yeah, you're not You're not cutting out a small group of people. Like, you're talking about half the country. You never see this happen the other way around, though. You don't see conservatives cutting off their friends or family based on someone else's politics. At least I don't see it. But you see the left repeatedly cut people out of their lives just over politics. And in the extreme, you see people on the left get upset that they have to share space with someone that they don't even know just because of their politics. What I think is even funnier is when I see these social media posts of Democrats saying that if you support this or that or whatever, you're a bigot or racist or whatever woke left terminology they use when someone disagrees with them. And I'm sitting there reading that thinking, you don't even really believe that, because I know people you're related to who don't agree with you. Are you calling your brother a bigot? Are you calling your son a homophobe? Are you calling your daughter racist? If you are, you're certainly not doing it to their face. It's all manufactured anger to fit the narrative that you saw someone else say because Orange Man bad. Matt, I personally know someone that calls Trump Orange Man every time they talk about him. Imagine if we just started calling everyone nicknames based on our derogatory perception of them. You're walking down the street. Hey, fat man. Hey, sweaty man. Hey, obese woman. Oh, and you know they won't like this one. Hey, trans woman.
I'm quite impressed by Trump. Trump's real estate portfolio has about 100 million properties. He lives rent-free in a lot of people's heads.
Yes, he does.
He has actually broken some of them, too.
Rosie O'Donnell.
Perfect example. The real part that actually makes them cut off their family is a fear that their views will be challenged. If you have an opinion that can't stand up to any scrutiny, it's probably a bad opinion or you don't understand the topic. It can be a lot easier to just tell yourself you are right and never have someone challenge that than to consider the possibility that you might be wrong.
They could never admit that they're wrong.
We have seen that many times. You're right.
Yep. Just like the next people we want to talk about, and that is the virtue signaling that's going on in Cuba. Check this out.
Cuba plunged into darkness for the third time this month after its power grid totally collapsed. The island nation under a U.S. oil blockade in the grips of a huge economic crisis. And while the country is struggling, a group of far-left activists are on the ground there to protest President Trump and the blockade. They're staying at a five-star hotel, of course, in Havana, with electricity and internet, and blaming the West.
When we look at the situation that Cuba is enduring now, when we look at the situation of Palestine, of Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, Venezuela, it's the same enemy. United States imperialism and Israeli Zionism.
And members of Code Pink are being called tone deaf by critics for their celebratory attitude to the floundering island.
It's hard to imagine anything more out of touch than influencers flying down some first class with their ring lights and their makeup to hang out in an impoverished country that is currently imprisoning, by the way, a reggaeton artist for writing a song, a protest song that went viral and was co-written with folks, Cuban Americans who are in America. That's the kind of person that the regime imprisons, and the libs are like, sign us up, let's go, we'll stay in a hotel. And by the way, is it a coincidence that the hotel has power so that you can stream the government's approved messages back to Cuban Americans and to Cubans there who are repressed? No, they're doing that for you. That's the regime's work.
Emily, how tone deaf?
Tone deaf indeed. Nothing says I stand with the citizens of Cuba who have no electricity quite like partying in a five-star hotel with your Cartier and caviar. Also not shocking that Ilhan Omar's daughter is there. I'm going to guess that Ilhan sent her down there to see if they need any daycares. The best part of this for me is Hassan Piker saying that U.S. law forced them to stay in a five-star hotel and then getting community noted on X that U.S. law says you just can't stay anywhere owned by the Cuban military or government officials. If they really wanted to help out Cubans, they would have stayed in private guest houses that Cuban citizens own. I don't think Hotel Bristol Malaya needs any more money. The average Cuban makes $150 per year. That's right, not $150 per week, Not $150 per month, $150 per year. Meanwhile, Hassan is wearing a shirt that costs $700.
You failed to mention his designer glasses. That nice pair of glasses on his face cost $1,500. People like Hassan love communism because the government will be rich while all the ordinary people will be poor. Russia, for example, Putin's inner circle are very wealthy. Putin's arguably the richest man in the world. But the average Russian is poor. People like Hassan Piker are confident that they will be in that inner circle, so they will be the wealthy ones, and they need to sell you the idea to convince you to make them richer. You don't need to work hard and make money if you can just take it from the other people. That would be legal in a communist system.
You mentioned this in the last episode, and we just kind of breezed over it. So I wanted to bring it up in this episode because this whole story is wild. The fact that these people don't realize how this looks from the outside is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they sit there and complain about capitalism while they sip on their Starbucks and they tweet from their iPhone. All of the modern benefits we have, they are using to promote communism, completely unaware of the fact that if you got rid of capitalism and you move to communism, it will all go away. There's no innovation in communism because there's no incentive for anyone to work hard.
Did you happen to see the video of them on the bus where you can see the person like at the front of the bus recording towards the back of the bus, and they all have their iPhones out and they're all recording just the piles and piles of trash on the side of the road and all that? It's like, guys, a little self-awareness.
I didn't see that video, but they don't have any. You yourself went to LA not long ago and said parts of it were an absolute dump. Imagine if the whole city looked like the dumpy parts. You wouldn't come home thinking, wow, that was a great place to go. You didn't come home from LA thinking, wow, that was a great place to go.
No, LA is so weird. You'll be walking down the street and it's just tent after tent after tent after tent, just homeless people lined up. And then all of a sudden, it's like the tents stop and you look up and you're like, oh my God, that house is $20 million. But then the house 40 feet away from it is a dump and there's just a line of homeless people on the side of the road. It's like the homeless people know where not to go. They know, oh, that's rich property, so I have to stay away from that or they'll make me move. If I'm over here on the poor side, I can stay here as long as I want.
Well, yeah, they've gamed the system for so long. They know they'll have to move from the rich person's property, but the police aren't going to show up and take them to jail. They're just going to ask them to move. They find the areas and they talk to each other, so they know where they can be.
Yeah, and the way they set up their tents, like under the bridges, where they put the lights that are under the bridge inside of like their tarp, so that's their light for the night. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of them aren't crazy or stupid, but they chose LA, which has similar policies to New York City, but it doesn't get anywhere near as cold in Los Angeles, so they chose right. It'd be pretty hard at this point for them to switch sides and cross the country.
Yeah, unfortunately, LA is going to be coming through there and starting to try to move some people since the Olympics are coming.
It'll be just like Brazil was when the Olympics were there. You put up walls in some area so that people leaving the airport can't see the favelas. You temporarily move people so that when the tourists are there, they don't see it. But the moment the game ends, it'll go back to the way it was.
Yep, exactly right. Well, Matt, it is time for our blind ranking segment. We're going to go back to an old category today. I have been elected president, and I have offered you any position you want. Are you ready?
Let's have some fun. Go for it.
All right. Your first one up is Sean Duffy's job, Secretary of Transportation.
Well, like Pothole Pete, I also like trains, but that wouldn't be my job qualification. Not the most exciting job. I'm going to go 4.
Okay, going number 4 for Secretary of Transportation. Next up, you have newly confirmed Mark Wayne Mullen's job, Secretary of Homeland Security.
Given you're the president, we would agree. So I think that would be a pretty good job. I'll put that one at 2.
Okay, going number 2 for Secretary of Homeland Security.
We're deporting everybody.
Yes, we are. All right, next up is Chris Wright's job, Secretary of Energy.
That would be an interesting one. I can't put it at 1, but I also can't put it at 5. Energy is important. I have good ideas on that, in my opinion. I think you would agree with me as well. I'll put that one 3 and take the risk of leaving 1 and 5 open.
Okay, you have 1 and 5 left, putting Secretary of Energy at number 3. Next up is David Warrington's job. He is the White House counsel.
Counsel as in lawyer, basically, I assume. I would not enjoy that job. That's going number 5, and I'm taking my chances on.
Okay, going number 5 for White House counsel. I think you will be happy with number 1. It is not Secretary of War, but it is Marco Rubio's job, Secretary of State.
Yeah, that would be number 1. Hegseth's job would be better.
That's a lot of expensive toys to play with.
That's not the fun part. The fun part to me would be the logistics side of it. If you don't have the logistics side down, you can't fight a war. Go ask Russia how that went. Rubio's job wouldn't be as much fun to me, but yeah, I'd probably like that one the most. I think I nailed that.
Yeah, I think you did pretty well. I personally would have put the White House counsel a little higher. I would have put that over Secretary of Energy and Transportation.
No. I mean, California spent something like $20 billion on a train to nowhere. We're trying to do high-speed rail. By the way, the finishing price tag to actually finish it is something like $130 billion. They laid some tracks in the middle of nowhere. There's no stations on either end of it, and it doesn't carry any passengers. We'll be cutting that crap out. We'll also be building more nuclear plants.
Yep. Well, you ended with White House counsel at 5, Secretary of Transportation at 4, Secretary of Energy at 3, Secretary of Homeland Security at 2, and Secretary of State at number 1.
I take a long pause after the first one you give me so that I can figure out what's coming next so I know where to put it.
Good strategy. Well, everyone, that's it for episode 45 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Before you click away, please hit the subscribe and follow button. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.